Haben wir noch was? Hello everyone. Can you understand us or me right in the back over there? Is it okay? Or louder or less? Mehr. Wir können noch mehr. Kannst du noch ein bisschen vielleicht am 1, 2, 3, hello, hello, 1, 2, 3. Hört ihr uns? Guten Tag. Ja, cool. Okay, yeah, welcome to the next open house here. It's nice that so many people came again. We will have 2 talks. Actually, we had kind of to change the schedule a bit because Richard called in sick yesterday with, I think, 41 degrees Celsius fever. It was like, wow. So we will start with Tamara in a second. And I will take over and do a 15-minute talk about interactive experiences that kind of resonate, where we kind of share a bit like how to do it in a way that people kind of react to this stuff. Some people might have seen it at the digital conference, so you're free after the first talk now, but you can stay, whatever. Yeah, I think we can switch the computers and then welcome in a second Tamara. Yeah, so what's really nice, so please welcome Tamara Knapp. She came in just for this occasion from Berlin, and we're really happy to have her here. So we got to know her during a project for Reeperbahn Festival. And she's a visual artist and a system designer, and she will tell you what that means in her scope, basically. Yeah, so I don't want to say too much up front. Thank you very much for being here, and afterwards we have some time for some questions. So, Tamara, up to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Elastique, for inviting me here to this talk today. I was very excited because I got to know Elastique and some of the team this year in the summer for Reeperbahn Festival, and this is a huge project that I'm going to talk about today. So I was thinking when I was preparing the talk, what could be also an interesting intersection of talking about the project and the system I built for Reeperbahn Festival, and also tell you even more projects or aspects about myself as an artist. So I kind of framed it as natural aesthetics and technological systems. My name is Tamara, and a little bit about my background. I'm a trained photographer. I did my bachelor and master degree in visual communication, and during that time I started also to get deeper into creative coding and started my kind of own interest in computer sciences. So this is some kind of abstract AI-generated image of myself being some kind of a creative technologist in a way. So for today, I, as you can see here a little bit, will tell first a little bit about the Leoniden project, and I will go through different kind of aspects here. So first of all, the project is separated in 4 parts. So I will talk about my inspiration, the material I generated, the system I built in Touch Designer, and of course, some on-location, work-in-progress insights. So, do you all know the Reeperbahn Festival? Yes? So it was very interesting kind of task, because the first part of getting into working with Elastique was being a video operator at first. So there were kind of 2 parts of working there. So on one side, I was a video operator, and on the other side, I was kind of the project creative developer in a way for the Leoniden band. And for that, I was thinking about, the Leoniden, what is so special for me about them? They had the special occasion that they wanted a real-time camera feed of them during the show and wanted to be captured, but also manipulated with different effects during the show in real time. So I was like, okay, let's watch some videos and get to know them a little bit better. And what I found out was they are like moving around super crazy. They have very good moves while they play their songs and perform on stage. So I thought movement could be a good aspect to kind of build a system, effects that could kind of work very well with them. So also this fact, but another fact, I'm really interested in the kind of intersection of movement and time. In my research, I did my master thesis about formless design and time, and there was like, okay, that sounds really nice, I like it. So I kind of started with my process of trying things out, having a camera where I could zoom in, zoom out in real time, and I was like checking things up. And as you can see here in my studio in Berlin, so I really tried to think, as you can see here, to think about different aspects of how these kind of movement effects could work in a real-time kind of situation with the camera. So there I was really thinking about decoding movement. So what kind of forms of movement could be there on stage, I was thinking. So they could go from left to right, from front to back. They do weird stuff with their hands, like doing crazy faces, playing with the instruments. And that was kind of the starting point to think about different kind of effects that could work with them. So I created a mood board and different kind of effects and also a color palette that was based on the last kind of album of Leoniden, which was this kind of rosé, green, orange, and bright blue. So there we had on one side different effects, on the other side different color palettes, and on the other side different arrangements of grids, for example, that could be on the LED wall. So here we had all the different songs prepared from Leoniden, which they want to perform. And for that, I did some kind of a timeline of effects that could work in my head, obviously, with the different songs. So here is a little walkthrough, my touch designer preparation file. And because it was real time and camera, that's why you always will see my face with all the testings in my process. And that is also something that I showed Leoniden to kind of get some insights into what could happen on stage, because we couldn't kind of make any tests or anything. We needed to work at the end what we had. So I tried to give them some kind of insights what could be possible. The next part, between creating the visual, creating the effects, is building the system that works on location and with different technical elements, all in this kind of field of Reeperbahn Festival. So really working on a system that includes all the different aspects that it needs. So here's the system. And here I try to give you some real insights into my touch designer file and how I really separate all these different kind of little tools, I call them. So as you can see here, all these little kind of windows are all different elements of one big system that works in the end together. So if you see, for example, the content could be one pearl of a necklace, but you need all the pearls to have the necklace, that it works and that it kind of does a circle and fits in the end. So you can also see this as some kind of circle that works from left to right. So we have the content, the mixer, where I can switch through all the contents, the FX, which for me means additional effects, the color, which means different colors, different color palettes, at the end, the output. Underneath, you have a perform window, which in the end has here my main UI, which is my UI, my UI system that is on my screen all the time, and then another perform window, which goes directly on the wall. So all these different components, and I will tell you a little bit more and deeper what is going on there. So first of all, this was my UI that I had on my screen. Here, all the tests, of course, with my images. And this you can see as some kind of index or archive, where you can go through all the different effects, click them, and then they go directly onto the real-time input you get. And on the other hand, you have this kind of slider palette, which was directly connected to my MIDI controller. So when I changed something there, I could always see it also on my screen, what is happening. The system content, as you can see here, are some many effects that I built for Leoniden. So these are all the different kind of looks that I generated in the system that I could use for switching around in the system and going with the real flow of the band in real time. My system mixer, so I could switch between different effects easily. My additional effects that I could put like as a layer on top of the effects that I already built. So, for example, a basic feedback effect. my different color looks and also different arrangements of layouts, of grids, so I could really go a little crazy on the wall with not only having one big image, having different layouts, different cutouts, for example, also. And of course, my output. And here it gets kind of interesting, maybe also to give some real in-progress insights. This is my UI system, which consists of 3 parts. So one part down here, you can see the real output as a preview that goes then to the wall. On the left-hand side right here, my interface with a description of what is going on there. And on the right-hand side, my archive. So building a system is always kind of abstract in the beginning. So when I start building it, I go from component to kind of think of it as a bigger construct. So as you can see here, for example, these are all the sliders I integrated in the tool. And on the right-hand side, these are all the images that are in the archive, so I could use them as a way to see what kind of effects are there and what I want to choose. Here, always my face, is a little component, which for me is kind of important because Touch Designer provides many options and possibilities to really create a system, but sometimes it gets kind of tricky, and then starts the point where you kind of need to code and need to code Python scripts to really kind of get the things you individually need for your system. So this is what is happening down there. So there are these window components, but also in my kind of experience, always the part where I need to code. So enough of the really system designy stuff. We are now on location, and this was like my workplace right here. So down there you can see one laptop which has Resolume open, which is another tool that we used. And here you can see the LED wall, the empty space, and here you can see some previews of the cameras. So on location, we have some people you might know sitting in the front right here, which was another part of the project. So it was not only me doing the stuff for Leoniden, doing the system design and so on, it was also interacting with the team of Elastique and to develop some kind of a timeline, a work kind of area that really works with the space, with the artists, music, and art. So this is me here, controlling like Leoniden, but also controlling the visuals of the team, which was also a very nice experience to really individually go through all the different video snippets that we created as loops, and then to map them on the wall, to go through them, and to really think about what kind of aspects were important, for example, for Maxi, for the artists she did the visuals for, and to kind of get a good and nice workflow so that it all looks nice, works nice, and has a good vibe. So here also some location insights. The LED wall, when it wasn't ready. My system, and the first time Leoniden were on stage and kind of saw themselves with the system, where I was like, please like it. which was kind of funny because they saw themselves and they were like, oh, crazy, my movement is kind of transformed. And then they started moving like really funny. And I was like, okay, so it works, it's nice, it's funny, it's already a good vibe for the show. So the equipment that we used is on one side a Blackmagic ATM Mini, which was a video mixer, so we could use all the different camera inputs in real time. They were walking around the whole time. And also to have a PTZ camera, which was under my control, so I had a little joystick there, and I could kind of go to the places I needed them to be. On the other hand, there was a IRU tab capture card, so we could kind of manage all the different outputs going somewhere, and a decimator to kind of get out of one output multiple ones to get them on different kind of displays, or to give the light person also a video output, for example. So to have a little rush through, we have an input, two different kind of camera styles that go into our mixer. We have the IRU tab capture card that gives us the connection to Touch Designer for me as an input. Then having the content manipulation through my MIDI controller. Then going from Touch Designer out, the window component I showed you, again into an IRU tab into the other laptop, which was connected with Resolume as a media server, and then Resolume as a tool to also kind of map the LED wall, which is the HDMI output Nova Star LED processor. So a lot of equipment, a lot of stuff that had to be connected, that we needed to think about. And here, for example, is a preview of all the different camera inputs that we got, and a little fun with Leoniden. So this was the output, which I captured from Arte Concert, which was kind of nice because they played it in the end and showed the whole show of Reeperbahn Festival, which was a very nice experience because we recorded the show with all the cameras, obviously, but we also recorded the visual content so they could kind of cut it into, for example, overlays to make it kind of look even more crazy. I don't know. So at the end, we had some kind of, again, another archive of many, many different outputs of visuals of the band, and different kind of aspects also that kind of give a vibe and had what I felt a very nice feeling. Also when you're like having this 1 hour and doing the MIDI controlling and going with the flow, you are really into it in a way, and it was really fun to interact with the band and kind of getting into their vibe of going crazy. And here are, again, some other insights. So we had 2 events. Leoniden was in July, and the other event was directly at the Reeperbahn Festival, which was in September. So there we had another LED wall, which had to be mapped differently also, with these stripes you could see on the right and on the left. So the content provided from the Elastique team had to be wider than in July, for example. Yeah, and here on the left and on the right, you can see 2 different artists performing on stage. And also, next to the Leoniden project, I wanted to give a little insight into what else I'm doing. So I provided a little kind of research that I'm doing constantly between tools, visual systems, and natural aesthetics. And for me, it is always kind of this technical setup, and all these different tools I also had at the Reeperbahn Festival with me. And I find it in my artistic practice very interesting to really think about systems as tools and to create one system with many tools. And with many tools to create archives, indexes, multiple outputs, and to really kind of play around with it. And for me, the tool thinking is something very special in my kind of workflow, I would say. So, what are tools? Tools can be defined in many, many ways. For me, tools must not be digital. Tools, for me, are, for example, also materials, which I'm really into, kind of going in micro or macro kind of levels to investigate into visual worlds that you can't see with your human eye, and playing around with it with different materials. For example, ferrofluid, I don't know if you heard of it. It's a sticky magnetic material that does very interesting reflections when you put light on it. And when we are by materials, I also did a little research together with the Geologische Sammlung Berlin in Berlin with my partner Xaver Hirsch. And there we were really interested in the textures and the things that could be hidden in stones, the stories that could tell, and we really were into the material itself and tried to find different ways to kind of portray it, to make the intangible kind of tangible. And there we took the stones, for example, to the dentist to be scanned there, as you can see here, like no teeth, just stones. So we tried to look into them, so that was like the main thought of it. And when we are by research and kind of also collaborating with different institutes, I did a research project with the Hans Knoll Institute in Jena, where I was investigating into different cell types and shapes of cells, and tried to find a mechanism that could extract cells' outer and inner shapes. And with that, really, as you can see here, scientific facts, I would say, I try to work artistically, which I think is a way of thinking how we can produce artistic content or visual content, kind of interesting where we take our inspiration from. This is the further process, I would say, from the project before. So I was working there with neural networks, training neural networks on the shape of cells. And then I tried to recreate what the cell is kind of into and try to look what imagery I could get out of the neural network and what I could create again with it, kind of a artificial cell shape kind of thing. And as you can see, I'm really into this natural thinking, natural aesthetics, and being this kind of inspiration, I would say, for my artistic work. And as you can see here, these are all also systems that work audiovisually, so the visual is directly connected to an audio input, as you can see here in Ableton. So you can play live, and then the graphics and the images kind of directly interact with each other. Another thing I am very interested about is working with data, and in this part, working with different face tracking techniques and to think of the face tracking as some kind of manipulation of imagery, for example, that was once tracked by the face itself. And on the colorful image here, you can see the data, for example, of the face parts. So as you can see, data can also be kind of interesting. Data is not only numbers and boring science stuff. We can also create very interesting components out of it, which I find very inspiring also in my artistic work and research. And when we are by designing systems, being a system designer, this is a system that is kind of similar to the system I built for Leoniden, except it's an audiovisual system that is based on particle systems. So these are only just particles. And you also have this archive, this index you can interact with and choose the visuals you want to use, but they will always be different because it's in real time. You never know what the input is like. So that is what I really like about the system thinking in real time. Another kind of project with Touch Designer, which was at Nacht Digital. I don't know if you know the festival. I did their little light installation with Xaver Hirsch and Lena Weber, and we were working with Touch Designer, only with the chops, using it as an input for the light to control the circuit technology, as you can see here, and here in the little box that we built as a controlling system. And last but not least, some kind of music video that also, to kind of get the circle around, plays with movement and my inspiration I have for a long time that I used for the Leoniden project to think about movement as something that interacts with time and what we could create out of it. And this was a project for an artist called Ivory, and it was a one-time, real-time video that was created really in real time. So a performer like moving, and then we changed the light, the colors, but all in real time. It was recorded just once, running through the system. And it was really about kind of experiencing music and the way we were meant to go out during COVID and to experience this kind of feeling of music and having some kind of own vibe in our home space. So this was it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was really inspiring, really impressive. So for me, the first question, we're all like working in all these kind of complex systems. How is it for you, basically, because I can imagine if you do something like that, it's dangerous to get lost in somewhere. Yeah. So how do you do it that you're not getting lost but still focus a path, or where is a path and where is not, and where's on purpose no path?
Mm-hmm. So I try to always sketch everything in the beginning. So sketch and mark all the really needed components, and to really start by building the system from the beginning, to only have like these components as an empty folder with a little kind of text in it, what needs to be there. And from there I go. Sometimes I drift, but I think that's normal. And for me, the system building itself is kind of structured. The visual building sometimes is drifting because there are so many possibilities, and then sometimes it's like having a pool, and then you need to really cut it down to the things that are like the best of the whole things that you build.
And before we go to questions from the audience, so basically, how got you in this area of real time? So when did it get you, basically?
So I think during my studies at Bauhaus University in Weimar, we had a collective, and there were like DJs and VJs, and I was both in a way. So this was, I think, my first experience of trying things out in this kind of study context and experimenting, really. And yeah, I got deeper into it during my master's because I was into the formlessness, time, movement kind of area of thinking. And I was researching Henri Bergson, duration of time. And this was like my first time where I got a real-time camera feed into my system. And I was like, okay, crazy, let's go.
Yeah, cool. Any questions from the audience? So it's a lot of people, no questions. Thinking, building a system in your head.
Hello. Yeah, it's a bit of similar question than you just asked, but I was wondering, since you did have like an inspiration and like a plan at the beginning, how did that change in the end based on the tool set that you had? Were there some things which were impossible from the initial imagination, or were there things that ended up happening that you didn't even think about at the beginning?
So I was testing my visuals and effects with my webcam, so not a huge resolution. And one thing I more at the end had to think about was, okay, I don't work there with a webcam, I work there with huge cameras, and I need to kind of work with systems that still work in real time when I get this input in. So this was something I had to rethink later in the process, when it was clear what kind of cameras we got and how many cameras we got. So it was 6 inputs, and I was like, okay, I need to get this 60 frames per second going. Yeah.
So you had to you just work with the same computer, or did you think of like getting like a big machine?
No, I had to rethink how I built the effects. Yeah.
Cool.
Like what kind of types of components I use.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Just pass the microphone. Yeah, so thank you so much for just coming for this evening from Berlin.
Thank you.
Tamara. So I think we just keep going. I will follow up. So as I said, for the ones who perhaps just arrived, unfortunately Richard yesterday called in sick heavily, basically. So Grüße gehen raus, wollte ich immer schon mal sagen. So I just spontaneously take over with a 15-minute talk about resonating interactive experiences and share some insights. So some of you might know it already, but I think a lot of hopefully not. Hello, hello. So, next thing. So I'm going to talk about kind of creating resonant experiences by kind of trying to tap a bit into human behavior. So a lot of you might know us. So we basically, like Betty and I started, hello. We started as an interactive studio in 2005, so we're basically dealing with human-machine interactions since 2005, and it's fun, like looking at how people and humans basically interact with these machines. And one thing, it's super, like no rocket science. but I love that thought, basically, to always respect that interactions that we do, either in like interactive experiences or in web experiences or apps or whatever. Like all interactions that we want from people, they take up human time. And this is some of the most precious stuff that we have. And if you have that in mind when starting to concept an interactive experience, it's always good because it can reflect, you can reflect on, okay, is it really honoring that? So for me, kind of an interactive experience must kind of reward the fact that a person is investing time into it. And what we always try with our teams and all the work that we do, that we try to give something back that is an equivalent to that people take their time and spending it with your application or experience or something like that. So what do I mean by that? So this is a nice interactive experience generated by Midjourney. No, it's just like we see a lot of kind of very like visual approaches of interactive experiences where people go and they like move a bit and then it's kind of wobbly, etc. It's beautiful if you have the time, if you're really like expecting it. But sometimes you see that people do a bit like that, and do a bit like that, and then they walk away. So why is that happening sometimes, even if people are new to the medium? So in my field, sometimes if the response to the interaction is too vague, it can become an unsatisfying experience. So like if we love as humans having eine Wirkkraft, so being able to change something, and if we do something and we don't see what am I changing here, like if I move fast and it's getting blue and I move slow and it's getting whatever brown, it doesn't mean something to me. And sometimes it's like, okay, I do not know what I'm doing here, basically. Somehow it reacts, but I cannot decode it. So this is what we sometimes try to see in our approach, because what's really interesting, and the one who know me, is I'm a sound designer from origin, and there I learned basically, especially sound, I'll show in a minute, they have encoded a certain emotional reaction into our subconscious. But there are images, situations that everyone knows, like from the cultural backgrounds, from films, etc. There are situations that if you play that image, if you hear that sound, etc., you immediately have something and might feel something. So for example, take this one, hopefully works. I tested it. You know? Kind of fits, and I think most of us, perhaps just from the Western Hemisphere or whatever, like immediately are in this like Christmas thing, like Santa Claus riding. You have this feeling, basically. That's what I mean. It's a basic sound. Actually, we tried once in the sound design for TV to replace it because we were so annoyed in the wintertime to do trailers with all these sleigh bells, it's called. We tried to replace it with other like artificial sounds. It didn't work because it doesn't trigger that emotion, basically, and you're not in that mood. So, and this is what I mean when you say, if we look for things that we know and that we deeply connect a feeling with, and then we change that in an interactive experience, it might create a greater emotional impact. So if, by abstracting real-life experiences into interactive installations, you get more, it starts resonating. I will walk through shortly through some projects, like older ones, newer ones, whatever, to show kind of some of the principles. The first one is the Dawnwald Hyper Fountain that we did several years ago. And basically was kind of that we ask ourselves, like, what do I feel when it was in collaboration with Mireille Meret. Basically, it was the idea, like, what do I feel when I'm experiencing real water on my hands while seeing something completely different in VR? And was actually a pretty fun process, because Christine and her father, who is very good in gardening, etc., we wanted to build very quickly a prototype to experience like how can we generate kind of a little flow of water, and was immediately we learned that we could not take such a tube because otherwise it's splashing all over the place, but we had like a little tube inside, so we just learned that on a very analog way. And then we wanted to see basically what worlds can we build that we see inside the VR headset. Actually, it was a project for Dornbracht, and they do, it's like bath fittings, luxury bathroom fittings, like water tubs, etc. And they wanted to go, after 13 years, to the Salone del Mobile in Milano again. And so, of course, we wanted to ask, like, how could they kind of enhance the feeling of their products, basically, when the water is flowing out, and what does kind of digital extensions, etc., do to that? So Dima started doing some research. We just did it in normal Cinema 4D, etc. And we were thinking of these particles. And here's a bit what I tried to sketch. The particles were super nice, but they don't trigger any feeling because you don't relate an emotional code to a light dot most of the time. And then there was this evening I will always remember, where Cornelius, Huki, and Justus, we already did in Unity kind of this emitter system where from this virtual water tub particles came out. And as you might know, like, you can exchange these particles pretty quickly. And then they started putting stuff in it. So they started putting like rotten teeth and rotten ears, etc. And we were like, wow, this is disgusting. I wash my hands in rotten ears. That was actually pretty fun. But at that moment, we recognized, okay, something's happening here, because we have a particle that has encoded kind of an emotional reaction, and perhaps we should use that. We did not in the end use rotten ears, but other things, for example, like glass particles, whatever. And we said, like, okay, we could make it like bigger, etc. And then we started testing that. And this is the first time Justus tries it out. So you have this little water stream, and you have the headset and all that stuff. And he's doing that. You can lift the audio a bit.
Oh, geil.
So there we had kind of some rose leaves or something like that. So we started, okay, let's put stuff in that means something to us. Rose is super kitsch, you know. We put in pills, we put in money and all that stuff. And it's funny because we as humans, we start immediately reacting with that. So that he starts eating that, it was not staged. And we saw that in Milano very often too. And then there was the second thing, we experienced when the water was not running that we felt something. Like 80% of the people we asked, they really were feeling something on their skin, even if there was no water running. And we said, okay, let's split the experience. So the first half, kind of the people spend it we use water, and then we switch it off. And then we continue without water, which brought in kind of a new question, for example, for Dornbracht, like if there's no water anymore, how perhaps we can generate the feeling, like speculative, the feeling of water digitally. But of course, you have to dry your hands. And that was actually fun with Huki and Annika. Because you had to dry it virtually, and it worked pretty well. We just put a tracker, and then we put a normal towel on it. It was actually fun that the cloth simulation... It was staged, but it worked. Actually, it worked. Now, the thing was that we just put kind of a cloth simulation and hang it on the tracker, and it behaved pretty much the same, obviously, as the physical towel. So it was really fun having people like drying their hands on virtual, yeah. And this is kind of the final movie. It's kind of a bit repeating with the voiceover what I already told, but I think we can use it. You can lift it a bit better. Yeah, there are these particles. Then we started, and this is one of my favorite. It's kind of like a Brombeerstrauch. It's like all these leaves with the sound design. We created a sound for every particle. This one worked better because they're more a bit like lava-like, so you had a bit a distance because they were kind of looking hot, etc. And actually what I forgot is that we built this prototype, and we found out that this kind of experience was so strong that the Dornbracht people, Mike Miri and whatever, were standing there and like, that's pretty cool actually, because of course it was planned to put the real products to the Milano showroom. But then we said, oh, it's much stronger if we have that ugly bucket there. So Christine's and her father's prototype went to Milan. And that was because like everyone said, like we don't need the physical product. And that was really nice because it kept that going. Yeah, that was kind of, I can show a bit, whatever. So next like perspective, basically. A general thing is that we as humans, we love ourselves as crazy as you can see in the world at the moment. Like, you know, we are very curious, and especially we love to see ourselves altered, to put into other contexts, and to put into situations that we do not know yet. And I always was wondering, like, why is that? Of course, I don't have a real scientific like answer to that, but I asked a very old friend of Betty, and this is Thilo. And Thilo is professor for communication and virtual reality in Amsterdam. And I asked him, why are we so fucking obsessed with ourselves? And he came up with 2 statements that I found really interesting from his perspective, but he was totally like, oh, he was just answered. And one answer was, because we can. Like, why are we so obsessed? We can because we have the time and because we can afford it. So nowadays, basically, we don't have to, like, we work a lot, but at the same time, we have a lot more time than earlier. And so we can spend time, like, circling around ourselves. And the second one I found even more interesting. He said, with the decline of institutions like government or religions or something like that defined our position in society, comes the need for individualization to find our own position. And he said that started long before social media. So we as humans try to fit into kind of a social structure, basically. So where are we? Like, where I am? And he said, like, since religions don't structure our daily lives, for example, so much anymore, we need other systems to find our position in society. And that leads to, like, looking at me all the time to see, like, how am I? And then showing off who am I to everyone else, because then they put me in their grid. And that gives me kind of a hold, basically. And that I found really interesting. And bringing that back to the interactive installations is like, okay, if it's about positioning and dealing, other people dealing with themselves, people started putting in their interactive installations humans into other contexts. And there's a very famous one, ugly as hell. But some of you might still know it. It's the Elf Yourself website from 2007, I think. And it was the first time that you could upload your photo and you became part of this crazy, you know, but it was insanely successful. So hundreds and thousands of people did that because it was the first time to kind of, it's not the first time, but one example where a broad audience could see themselves in a completely different context. There was the second one, I think 1 or 2 years later. It was The Hero. It was a commercial where you could upload your photo and then you became kind of the central person of that film. And so you were bespoken in a gallery, whatever, and you just rescued Sweden, I think it was. And the same, like, you see yourself in a completely different context that you could never see yourself in reality, basically. And that is super appealing. And then, of course, like the super simple face swapping from 2015, like, what happens to my face, to my signature? As we know, the face is the most important, like, information source to communicate with other humans. And if we swap that, it does a lot to our, like, self-image, basically. Yeah, so what nearly always works, and we did that a lot of the times, and I was sometimes, like, tired to do it again. What you can always do if you're building an interactive experience and you want to make it successful, put the face of your users into other contexts. But there are 1,000 ways. We saw it, it's beautiful, like how you, for example, changed, and we love to see humans altered because it's so close to us. It's always questioning us and all it, like, circling around everything. Yeah, and we, for example, on this second example, very commercial, we wanted to apply this principle to a real job, and this is how it started. Very often we sketch out the ideas for interactive experiences and say if we can describe it very shortly. If an interactive experience can be described in 2 to 3 sentences, it has a good chance to become a compelling one. Because very often, we come back to this, people spend time with our applications. We have only a short slot in the time of a person that he or she can spend with our interactive experiences. And if you, in a concept phase, need kind of 15 minutes to explain what's going to happen to the person, it might be difficult to convey that in 2 or 3 seconds when the person starts using that thing. It doesn't say that everything has to be superficial. But if you do something in a commercial thing, and this job was to be for BMW, and it should perform basically, you have to keep that in mind. And that helps sometimes in the concept process to not to think too complex, because you will not explain it in the 5-second, or as we know, Instagram average viewing time, whatever, 6 to 8 seconds at the moment, or TikTok. So you have to get the interest of people there. Yeah, this is like the idea. We call it kind of Megami. It was like visitors can take a face photo on a terminal, upload it, and then you're immediately seeing yourself, like this self-alteration, hugely above on a huge LED wall. And then we started sketching that. This is kind of one of the core images where you are the person over here. And of course, we had to make it happen. As far as I know, it's the first kind of fixed position 3D billboard where you can upload yourself, and immediately, like 20 seconds after you uploaded it, it starts running and you see yourself. We would love to do that on Times Square. Who has contacts? Please forward it. But this one is at BMW Welt in München. Yeah, and then the process started, of course, that we had to build a storyboard, define on which parts of that experience is really the face swapping happening. And we partnered up, we called the guys from Reface. They have a face swapping app that is kind of famous, and we just called them, hey, shall we do that in a large scale, basically? And they wrote an algorithm where we could do the AI face swapping in a huge scale, and there's a complex pipeline behind that so that it's getting fast enough. Yeah, and when we come to planning the user journey, if we have an application like that, there's one thing that grounds myself very, very often, because never assume that people are willing to engage with your experience at all. They're not interested from the start. And if you work on an experience in the agency, in a collective or whatever, for weeks and weeks and weeks, you're so into it because you know every detail, and you assume that people would look for that, and they're waiting for that, etc. No. They come, they look, is it interesting after 2 seconds? If you get over that hurdle, you might have them longer, basically. Actually, in another project, we looked it up yesterday, average time on a website at the moment, 50 seconds. So this is kind of the time spans that you can start dealing with your audience. And that sometimes helps because clients, as well as our teams, as well as myself, sometimes forget that people walking by, they need immediately to understand it, and they're not waiting for it. So if you're planning kind of a system, try to find a user journey that needs as little onboarding as possible. You have to give this revenue as quickly as possible. I upload something, I see immediately something happening, and then I have to give a promise that I say, okay, it's worth waiting 20 or 30 seconds until this film is running. So they saw it before, but still they're standing there, and sometimes you see people walking away and the application is lost. They're hard on you, but yeah. So that was kind of the final visual, basically. And here's a little movie about how it worked. And that's the thing, that you need a very complex system that Lucas, for example, worked on heavily, sitting here, and others from the team, basically, to make people attach. And we expected, because people go to the BMW World to see cars, and very often they're not using the interactive installations. And we expected with the client, if 30 people to 35 per day do it, we're kind of happy. But that was really fun, because like in 10 months, I think more than 13,000 users did that. So they line up, and we have in peak times over the weekends, we have like 230 people waiting to do this, because it's so attracting to see yourself in other contexts. It's like just this simple principle. So super commercial, but it's kind of, I'm trying to illustrate how to use that. Yeah, it's amazing to see how our species loves to spin around itself. So it's all about me, 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 just me. And vielleicht ein bisschen you, aber meistens me. So I've sketched out a bit how this Mirror Me installation evolved. So I asked myself, after all these years, and especially, for example, with Betty, of course, discussing very often like the approaches with these interactions, etc. What if we create kind of a completely exaggerated echo chamber for a human? So this principle that we love to spin around ourselves, I had in a moment this idea, okay, what if I create something where it's so attractive to go in, because it's like giving me other context, and then I can share that, and it's like, and this, I wanted to create a gesture for that. They can't resist to share this stuff, and by sharing this experience, the circle about spinning around yourself started again. So I did not want to mich lustig machen. I did not want to criticize it, basically. It was just nice to create kind of a little honeypot where people love to use it, give something to them, but at the same time, it's kind of demasking a bit like how we work, a bit. And this is how Mirror Me started. Very often I start with sketches, and we try in the teams like discussing ideas on a very rough level, because very often this is done in 2 seconds, and you can discuss it, and you can immediately see if it's working or not. So we had like 2 robots with like mirror surfaces, you standing in between. That's it. At that time, it was still like Mirror Me Mirror, the name, because you standing between 2 mirrors, but then we left away the second mirror. And then we go quickly into prototyping. So that was done with Peter. So where we checked like are the movements interesting? So we used, as you can see, this is a round mirror, but by this test we found, okay, it's not working. It looks like visually nice, but what you lose when you have a round mirror, you don't see kind of the spinning of the plates anymore, because you don't have any corners. So we decided, by doing this test, no, let's stay for a square mirror system. And then we started, or actually Jan Sickinger started to animate to the sound the robots in cinema. And Adrien wrote the script to extract kind of all the movement data. And what I did the soundscapes up front, because I very often love that, because it gives you immediately an emotion what we want to achieve with an experience. Even if it's a crappy image, if you hear that, you have a feeling, okay, this is where it could go. Yeah, and what comes out is kind of these little funny numbers. It's like pretty simple. Every line is a frame. You have 6 axes on a robot, and I think it plays it with 120 or 140 frames per second. So we just stream this animation that we did in cinema into the robot. Yeah, and this is kind of what came out. We're really happy. This is a clip, I think, that we didn't even really share. There was put in a camera on recording during the complete week where it was exhibited, and there were more than 1,100 people using it. So, and since we just chose one of the movements, we had 4, we could do this film just with editing, no post-production, etc., because the robots move always the same, but of course you have always different people. Yeah, so that was that. Yeah, to come to an end, let's sum it up. Basically, if you want to create kind of a nice experience that is kind of fulfilling or it attaches to people, there might be ways to do that. So the first thing is never assume that people are willing to engage with your experience at all. Offer them something valuable in return for spending their time in your experience. And the last one, create a highly emotional value by placing your users in different contexts or by kind of making these deeply learned codes tangible in a surprising way. And that was it. Thank you so much. Even if you're shy, of course I can answer questions too.
With the image selfie project and the animation that after that took place, how did you handle the security system of the images? Like, were they saved somewhere in a
That was
place,
kind of a
or?
process, of course, especially with a company like BMW. First of all, you had to give the approval that it is saved for a short amount of time. And then kind of the team around Toby, Yanni, Lucas, etc., we split up these shots that were sent to the AI servers. But at that time, I think, if I understood it right, they decoded basically, we had to talk about that here too, they decoded basically the face into numbers. So it was an abstraction, a mathematical abstraction of your face, basically, that went to, in I think 3 or 4 streams in parallel to the reface servers. Then they were swapped, and then they came back. So that was the thing. And then, of course, we always check that with the legal department and all that stuff of the companies, that it's going to be deleted after 24 hours, and then it's kind of GDPR conform and all that stuff, which is behind such a project. And then the images that came back, they were layered in a touch designer system to like a rendered backplate, basically, then the face on it, and then in front with all the things like the helmet, etc., above your swap.
Okay, nice. I like the fact with the coded image.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think they said it was just like, and even kind of it was interesting because they said the base image that they use, or the head, and it's just a mathematical, they just blended or added and divided by 2, basically.
Thank
Add
you.
2 faces divided by 2, you have a swapped face. Yeah. If it's so silent and you want to drink and eat, we have one highlight for today. And hopefully Kaspar and Annika are coming up front, because, of course, this evening is called Beam Dream. And how it came up was that Kaspar was doing some research with lasers. And then we said, okay, don't you want to play with that, etc.? And he started doing that and took Annika too. And I didn't see the final result. I'm super curious, because they know I'm gonna tell you a bit what they're doing, and then we do kind of a Rattenfänger von Hameln, and we walk over to the studio, and then they can show you the experience. Come up. The sound now, right? You want it in the hand, or?
Hi. Thanks you're here. While Casper's setting this up, I'm going to talk. Yeah, this is a very informal talk because we've been working the past days until very, very late, and we didn't prepare a proper talk. So you're going to see the mirror board that we worked with. And yeah, just a heads up, it's really just an experiment. We tried to make something really nice within a very short amount of time, just trying to figure out what is possible with these tools that we were given by Elastique and also Laser Animation Solinger. They sponsored the laser so we could test a little bit with them. And yeah, just make something that hopefully you guys will enjoy.
Yeah.
Do you want to start?
I say the same thing. No. Yeah, so as Annika says, it's super informal. We just want to share a little bit about our thoughts and process behind this project, because we didn't really know anything about lasers before, besides that they look super cool, even better with haze. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, you can show a little bit of the inspiration or something.
Yeah, I mean, Instagram is a great place for inspiration. So on our mural board, we collected everything that we thought kind of used lasers in a spatial way, in an audiovisual setup, to get inspiration and see, okay, if we want to combine it with video projection, what did people already do? And there are quite impressive stuff out there.
And we knew that we would have the lab space to kind of work with, and it's kind of a cool testing area. So we were like, okay, we have this really dark room. What can we do with it to make it look a little bit spatial? And obviously, we don't have a huge industry hall like this, but this is the other way than I'm used to. Okay, but yeah, we tried to see, okay, what kind of setup could we do in the space? Casper had this idea of beaming on 2 canvases from 2 sides. I thought, okay, can we maybe
directly into people? And this was before I had the laser shoots seminar, where I realized, okay, it's maybe not the best idea. Would look cool though.
It would look cool, and the funny thing is, aside from each other, we both had kind of the same idea that it would be really cool if the people could kind of walk around between the lasers, but we realized it's maybe not so safe. So we kind of came up with something that is somewhere in between. We took a little bit of this setup and made it so that nobody goes blind. Yeah, and then we had different ideas of what kind of visuals we could do. And I was thinking more in the sense of how can we do it with things that are 3D and made in After Effects. And Casper was thinking in the way of how can we make generative things from Touch Designer. And I think in the end we tried to combine it to see also what is possible with the tools and how do the lasers actually work within these parameters.
Yeah, exactly. So we ended up having generated content from Touch Designer, and you were making some pre-rendered things. So one thing, the generated content from Touch Designer uses geometry to kind of send information to where the laser beams should go, and your pre-rendered stuff is kind of tracing areas in the videos. That it tries to match. Yeah,
or you can make a separate layer on top of the the content that is rendered from Cinema 4D, like we did it in this case, and then I did a separate layer that is also moving the actual lasers, because we have this combination of a beamer and the lasers. Yeah. But yeah, it was really nice to figure out what can we do, and we got a lot of learnings, I would say, and things that we would do differently or explore more. But I think that was kind of the idea of the project, so yeah. I think we're pretty happy with it.
I think a good learning is, so enjoy the visuals here, because what we learned is when you combine video beaming with lasers, since the lasers are super bright, it's kind of hard to make the visuals get through, actually. I think now we are running on 10% power from the lasers, and it's still competing quite a lot, actually. So, yeah, super good learning.
No, I think we kind of made it work the best we could, so I hope you guys will enjoy it. Yeah, and the room is kind of small, so I don't think we can all fit in there, but I guess we can just kind of separate. Some people can come over, we can start the show, and then we can kind of take turns. The show is about 5 minutes, so we can kind of swap out the crowd.
Yeah, and it's a non-linear loop that just runs. Of course, it has a start and an end, but feel free to jump in, jump out, how you like it. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can lead the pack, you can make some space for the two, and then you can follow them, and then they open the space. Yeah, thank you so much. So this is kind of the official part. Starts now over in the lab, and afterwards feel free to have some drinks, etc. and have a great evening.